So we have modeled our table, and now we want to get into modeling the chair. To do so, we'll start with a cube. We'll just click on Shift A, go to Mesh, go to Cube, and we have this cube. And this size here is pretty big compared to the table, so we need to scale it down. So we click on S to scale, and let's scale it by half its size, so 0.5, and we're good to go. So you can compare it and it makes more sense now. So we also need to make it thinner. So we will click on S and Z, and we can get it to be as thin as this, and this makes more sense. So let me just bring up this item tab here so that you can see the scale and dimensions for what we're working on, in case you need to get the exact values. So now we have this flat base for the chair. We need to edit it, so we can go to the edit mode while it's selected, and we can now add a loop cut. So to add a loop cut, we can manually go over here, or we'll just be using the Ctrl R, and while it is on the x-axis, slide it a bit. Let's say we like 0.8. So 0.8, click on enter, Ctrl R again, go over to the x-axis, minus 0.8 or minus 0.8. It still works that way. We go this way and go Ctrl R, go closer, do the same thing, minus 0.8, Ctrl R, select it and slide, and minus 0.8. So what we have here is the base for the chair. We would need to move it up a bit, and we'll do so in the object mode, because moving an object in the edit mode will change its origin. The origin can be identified with this yellow dot in the middle, and we'll just have a little demonstration by clicking on A to select everything, G to move, and constrain it to the Z-axis by clicking on Z. And as we move it upwards, you can see that the yellow dot did not move with the object. So we'll just need to move out of the edit mode by clicking on tab, so that we can leave the midpoint of that object in the center. So now we can click on G, Z, and move it up. So let's say by 0.77 or so for the base of the chair. Remember, you can actually use the add-on that we'll be discussing in the bonus section by going to view, and you can import your references. If you've previously imported your references, you should see it over here. So 0.77 is a good enough height for the base of the chair. Now, once we have this set, we can go back to the edit mode to add some, feet to this chair. And I will just go to the bottom of this base by clicking on the tilde key, go down to bottom. And I can't see the object in my view right now, but remember, if you click on the period key, it will bring the object that is selected to your view. Now I'll ensure that I am on the face select, click on 3, select one face, shift, select the other faces, and we're good to go. So let me just switch back to the front view, tilde key front view, and I will now be able to extrude this face, these faces that I've selected, down to the base. Now this is sort of like my ground point. But remember that as we're moving this object upward by 0.77, we took reference from the midpoint of this object. So just for demonstration purposes, you see here that this is the center of this object. Don't mind my line, it's not really straight, but let's just see here. So this is the center of this object here, and we moved this object here by 0.77. So in case we were to move or extrude the foot of the chair or the feet of this chair, and we clicked on E to extrude the face, and we tapped on 0.77. you can see here that, let's click on enter, you can see here that there is still a little space left to get to that exact ground surface. So this is just to let you know that if you were to work with real world values, you need to take note of the fact that whatever way you are moving your object, it will take reference to the midpoint. So that's just a point to note. So let me delete these annotations. So I can manually come over to moving these feet of the chair to the base. Remember, they are still selected. So while on the front view, I click on G and I click on Z and I move it up. You can snap it to the grid by clicking on your control key and it will snap. However, this might be too sensitive, so I can use my shift and drag to move it a little bit more gradually than the other option. Good, so I have it set to the base. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to add the back of the chair, and I can do so by clicking on these two faces here, and let's say I am in my front view. Just for demonstration purposes, this is the reason why we need to extrude faces. If you move a face, like you click on G and you move it up, you see that it is just going to deform that face. So you need to create a new geometry by clicking on E so that it will create a new geometry for you. And we can move it up, and let's say by let's say 1.5 or so, 1.5, and we can actually test how high this chair should be, because it looks pretty high, using our import references. So it looks pretty high, so let's use I think one should have been better, or let's say, let me just tab to edit mode and Ctrl Z that, bring back the references, and let's use this. So we can, let's say we want it to be as high as this. So 1 point, let's say 1.17 should be good. So if we want it to be pretty higher than, you know, this reference here, that should be good. So we can use the figure 1.17 to, you know, fix up the height of the chair. Let me switch to the front view to have a clear view of this back area. Now we need to recline it a bit because we want whoever is sitting on it to be more relaxed. So we need to recline it by an angle. Now if I click on the traditional method of rotating the face, where I click on R, you see that it's actually just rotating this face based on the median point of that selected face. Now you can see what I'm talking about here. Let me switch to this mode, so that I'm switching to the X-ray mode, so you can see the dots in between. So this dot signifies the median point. So if I click on R and rotate it on the y-axis, you can see that it's still rotating just on the y-axis with respect to the median point of the selected faces. Now we do not want this. We want to recline the entire back of the chair with respect to the median point of the world origin. So what we'll do is we'll ensure we are on front view and go to this button over here, click on it, and you see 3D cursor. Now a cautionary note will be to ensure that your 3D cursor is set to the world origin. Now this is what we actually want, so we're going to click on R, and now you can see that this angle is taken with respect to the world origin, so we can now move it a little bit to the back. If you did not have your cursor at the center, let's say it is somewhere else, like I will click on shift right click to move it somewhere else, and I click on R to rotate it, you can see what's happening. So don't be surprised if you're having something really funny. So in case you do not have your cursor set to world origin, you can just click on shift C and it will recenter your scene and move the cursor back to world origin. Or you can click on shift S and you see different options here where you can choose cursor to world origin and you have it good to go there. Good, so we have the back of the chair. To round this up, we can just go over to creating this back support, the backrest, by adding another loop cut here to help us gauge where we want to add the backrest. So to add the loop cut, we can go again, Ctrl R, go to one of the back areas, click on it once, and once we have the dimension we need, let's say it's 0.39 or 0.4 is okay. So minus 0.4 or minus 0.4, and we're good to go with that. We'll do the same thing for this other aspect. So Ctrl R, loop cut, slide it a bit, minus 0.4, and we're good to go. Now I will switch out of the X-ray mode, because if I were to select any of these faces, it might select the back face as well. So I just need to switch out of this X-ray mode by tapping this. Then I will switch to the solid view because it helps me see better. So I will click on Z and solid, and I can now see this better. So I also go to the face select, click on 3, click on this face, and this time I want to create a new face from this object here. So what I would do is I would just click on shift D to create a new face and click escape. So once I have this set up, I can now extrude by clicking on E, and I can see the guideline is set to the y-axis, and that's good enough for me. So I can gradually move it, and yeah, I have the backrest and it's looking good. So finally, we can create a cushion for this chair. And to do so, I will just click on some of these faces here. Let me shift select these faces. Let's select these ones. And I will do the same thing for what we did when we wanted to create the backrest by creating a new face again. So I'll click on shift D. I have a new face and I'll click on escape. But I will not click out just yet because I want to create an entirely new object, because once we start adding textures or materials, we might want to have our cushion to have a different texture or material than the wood for the chair. So for this reason, I need to separate this object from the chair. So to do so, I can right click and I'll see separate selection. So it's simply saying separate this selected surface by selection. So I will tab again out of edit mode. Before I do that, you can see that it created a new object here and called it cube 001. So we can tab out of edit mode and we see that we have two different objects. Before I go further, I would need to save this and rename them. So let's go again. So let's call this cushion. And yeah, I think I like this. So now let's edit the cushion. Your guess is as good as mine that we need to tab again to the edit mode. This time we're working with just the cushion, so we're safe to click on A to select everything, click on E to extrude, and extrude it out, and this is a fluffy cushion. And this is good. We can now go ahead to do the finishing touches. So I'll tab again out of edit mode. And before we end the topic on making a chair, we would want to add some finesse to it. That is to add some curved edges and, you know, some nice finishing touches. And to do so, we'll be using modifiers. Modifiers in Blender is a quick way to add an effect to whatever object is selected. Now in this case, I have the cushion selected. I can go to my properties tab. I will first collapse this so that you can see clearly. So I'll go to my properties tab, this popular properties tab that we said we'll talk about. Now we're doing it. So I will go to this spanner icon here. So once you click on it, you would see this option to add a modifier. Now what we want to do is to add rounded edges to each of these, you know, 4 edges over here. So what I would do is to use the bevel, and it adds a quick sharp cut to the edges for the object I selected. Now remember that you have some settings here. I am currently on edges, that's why I'm getting this effect, and this is what it actually does. I will switch to the wireframe view so that you can see it yourself. Wireframe view, and right here I can see that it automatically added some new polygons for me, and it essentially interpolates between the lines or the edges and adds new polygons to make the look or feel of that object to be smoother. So in this case, if I were to increase the amount of bevel, it's going to make the effect around the edge to be sharper. However, I can increase the segments, that is, it will calculate between the 2 polygons, make an interpolation, and add a new segmentation to it. So I can increase it as much as I need. Remember, the more the polygons, the heavier the project, so we would need to just make it a little bit you know, not so much anyway. So I can switch back to solid view, and maybe I increase it one more time, and I'm good with that. I will also add the bevel to this, and in this case I can see that the sharp edges is pretty exaggerated, so I just need to reduce the amount of bevel. And once I've gotten an amount I like, I just like this nice crease over here, and we're good to go. So there you have it. You have your chair, and now we can go ahead with setting up the dining set.